It's the last video of the day, and this is about my third time recording it because I'm leaving my brain a little bit. I've been talking all day. We're going to look over Unreal Engine. See already. We're going to look over Substance Painter. We're going to start off simple. We're going to look at the UI, look at some navigational stuff, and then we're going to look at how to import stuff from Maya into here, and then how to do a few kind of fun little things. This isn't going to be a this is how we use everything inside of Painter. This is going to be like a basic. It might be like 45 minutes to an hour. So let's look at the UI first of all. Up at the very top, as per usual, we've got our drop-down menus, but ours are really simple in here because there's not a lot you can do inside here except texture. So file, new scene, open scene, import stuff, save as, the stuff you'd expect. Edit is all about configuring the project, some settings for the. This is the settings for Painter. It's very simple. Mode: are we painting? Are we baking? Are we rendering? Windows: what can we see? Can we reset the UI? Can we save the UI? Viewport and all this kind of stuff. So I've never Viewport, Java, Python, and Help. I've never used. So it's only these first four that I ever use. So drop-down menu is nice and simple. So coming down to the left-hand side here, we've got the ways of actually texturing stuff. We got paint, and these will all become activatable in a little bit. Paint, erase, paint along path, projection, polyfill, we've got smudge, we've got clone, we've got a material picker, which is basically our color picker. All very Photoshop stuff. Remember, this is just Photoshop on crack. And then we've got some stuff here about you're going to actually ignore these bottom four here. Just think about these guys up here. All these are actually color key bound as well to numbers. So 1 would be paint, 2 would be eraser, 3, 4. We'll go through them in a bit. So in the default UI, you've got this assets folder here, which is basically contains everything that we're going to use, and also quite a lot of stuff that we're not going to use. I tend to drag this off and either put it under the monitor or close it in until I need it, because I find this gets in the way and I don't use it enough to warrant it being around all the time. So I'm actually going to close that. This is a new thing, this 3D assets thing. I'm just going to get rid of that because we're not going to use it. There we go. And as you've noticed there, it's really easy to adjust your UI. So on the right hand side here, we've got texture set list, and this is the individual textures we're going to be doing. So we're going to be doing something on. We're going to be having an example of something which has 2 texture sets on it, and we'll show you why. Layers. Well, layers are layers. Texture set settings are settings that relate to these texture sets. Again, these will all become a lot more obvious in a bit. And properties is just like the details tab in Unreal. This essentially contains all the information, but rather than containing information for an object, contains information for our tools. So what I'm going to do is I like dragging this over to the left hand side, docking it there, because then I can see the whole. It's a big now. It's nice big list for me, and then my layers and stuff have got more space. So I like having something like this. In the middle, we've got our 3D view here, and we've got our 2D view. This is our UVs. Navigating, just like in Maya, you hold Alt, left mouse tumbles round, middle mouse pans, right mouse zooms in. Very, very simple. F focuses. Very, very good. And kind of the same thing inside of here. So Alt, that's tumble, that's zoom, that's pan. F to focus. Very, very good. And that's it, that's the navigation. That's all we need to do. I will just grab something to show you some layer stuff. So depending on the type of layer you're dealing with, or the type of thing we're dealing with in the layers, you'll have a different kind of set of information up at the top here. But with your basic painting layer stuff, what you've got is some Photoshop stuff. And we've even got the properties on the side. So Photoshop stuff, size. Size is the size of your brush. If you're using taper, that's the size minimum max of the taper. Flow, opacity, stroke opacity, spacing, all your jitters here. It's all there. It's all nice. And then you got stuff to do with your actual 3D stuff, which is the alpha. And then if you're using a layer like this, then you've also got some other stuff. Above here, we've got the same stuff. We've got size, flow, stroke opacity, spacing. We've got symmetry. So you've got symmetry on the in here, which is nice, and then symmetry settings. So that's a little like sailboat thing up here. And then we've got stuff to do with rendering. So do we want to go into the renderer, the Iray renderer? When he wants to, it'll take a minute to kind of wake up. There you go. So you can do rendering inside here. It's just a bit naff. It's okay for quick stuff. Back to texturing. Are we baking? We're going to look at baking. Camera settings, that kind of stuff. And that's really it. I mean, the UI and what actually goes on inside here is really simple. So what we're going to do is actually go and set up something inside of Maya and bring it into here. So I've got previously set up this. And I've got two versions of it set up actually. There we go. So we've got a good version and a bad version. And why I'm telling you this is to kind of get over one of the hurdles of texturing that people kind of forget about or get confused about at the beginning. We're dealing with two objects here. It's part of one selection group, but it's two separate objects. It's just combined together. And you'll have this, if I had the whole character in here, you'll have the exact same thing where, you know, I've got hair, skin, eyeballs, upper clothing, lower clothing, accessories, weapons, anything like that. These will generally be textured as one group. But if I was to combine everything together, but have everything as one UV, like one material, like this, you can see here all our different UVs are stacked on top of each other. And I know these are all fine, because, well, they're all laid out properly, because they're all my UVs for my bag. So that's UV'd as one group nicely, and then that's all the UVs for my bodice. That's all UV'd nicely. And they're just stacked on top of each other. Now, if I did this and just had one material, so this has got a Lambert 1 applied to it, they're all getting affected by the same material. And this has also got what is important with Unreal as well. If I was to take this into Unreal, the same thing would happen. So what would happen is I'm going to export this, and I'm going to export it as an FBX, not an OBJ. Again, don't worry about knowing how to do that just yet, because, you know, this is all pre-learning stuff. I guess we can show you. So FBX is when we're exporting in the file type here, we want to just make sure that it's set to FBX, which is somewhere around here. Where's FBX? Oh, sorry then. There it goes, XPS. We don't want to be an OBJ. We have sometimes export stuff as OBJ, but generally the safe one to do is an FBX. Okay. So I'm going to export that. I think I've already done it. So I'm going to come into Painter, and I'm actually going to set up a new scene. How do I do that? It's very easy. So File, New. My template is the type of materials we're going to be making, so I'm just going to keep it nice and simple. ASM PBR metallic roughness. My file is what I'm actually going to be texturing, so I'm going to come in here, File, select my bodice bad, for my bad version of it. And I'm not going to change anything else. And then I'm going to click OK. And then it brings it in. There we go. So it's all nice and good. Look at that. Ooh, isn't it pretty? But the problem here, you can see that both those UVs are actually overlapping each other. And I'm not able to texture on any of them, because if I type to texture on one, you can see how the texture is also appearing on another piece. I'll make it a different color just to make a point. There you go. See that as I'm texturing on there, that red will sometimes appear on other bits. It's because everything's overlapping. It's not great. Also, this is annoying. The symmetry is off because inside Maya, yes, this is in the middle of the world, but this is off to the side. And this actually extends the almost like the bounding box of the object. So now the middle point is around here. So that's a bit annoying as well. The symmetry is not in the right place. But let's set up that object to not have that issue happen, not have the overlapping UVs happen. It's very, very simple. All we've got to do is, again, still have one selectable object, but every other UV sheet, or every UV sheet needs to have a different material and a different color. Well, not a color. I just use a color to help me visually see the difference. They just need different materials. So my bag section, this is all one UV group here. That's one material. And then I would have a different material for different UV groups all over everything. Because then that's how Unreal, I keep calling it Unreal. That's how Painter, and I guess Unreal, separate these materials. Because if I was to take this into Unreal, the same thing would happen. I'd only get one material, and I can't apply that one material across both of them. So exporting it like this is also going to give me something to work on inside of Painter, and also something to work with inside of Unreal. Okay, so I export that. So we just go in there, File, New, add it in. And yes, I've just File, selected it inside there, and then I'm going to leave everything as it is. Again, we annoyingly can't change any of those mirroring issues. I'm not going to bother doing that in this video, but there are ways I've done that in the past to make sure that it is symmetrized. So I'm going to click OK. Click discard. Now what we've got is both objects come in, but we can see in the texture set lists up here, we've got two separate, essentially, files or layers. So we've got one which contains all the bodice, and then one that contains all the bag, and they will have their own. So add two layers to that. You can see my bag has now got two layers, but my bodice has only got one. So these, even the layers are separated between them, which is really good. And then we can start texture, and obviously you can see that that texture is not passing over to the bag. Even if I try and texture on the bag, because I've not got that texture set selected, I can't. If nothing happens. So let's name this. Let's call this. What's this? This is bodice. I've done that thing again where I do the capitals wrong way around. And this is bag. There we go. If I should move my tab out of the way, I don't need it there for now. There we go. Okay, so let's do a quick reminder about what we're looking at on screen. Top here is all our drop-down menus, of which we use a fraction of, because we're only really using new, open, or import, whatever. Texture set list is the individual materials, so the individual texture sets we're going to be texturing. Layers are layers. Texture set settings are the settings related to each of these, which we're going to kind of futz with in a second. And properties is the properties of the tool that we're using. So if I go back to the layer, like there, for instance. So here I've got my paint, just standard paintbrush, or 1 on the keyboard. So that's all my settings for that. A lot of it is very Photoshoppy. 2 is eraser, 3 is projection, 4 is fill, 5 is smudge, 6 is clone, and then you've also got paint along path as well, which is quite fun. Okay, let's have a look at texture set lists. So, or texture set settings. So, one of the things about PBR texturing is that it's not just about adding, like as we would normally paint on a canvas, we just add layers of stuff and kind of make all the shapes we want. We need to, well, we can do that, but we shouldn't do that. We need to also use additional maps, things that don't actually come out in the final piece, but we use them to help us almost like automatically mask stuff off, add information in places where we really want it to add quicker. It's not going to do it perfectly and then we just forget about it, but it does like some of the work for us where it'll start adding information in areas, and then that'll help us guide the information, the rest of the information that we paint in by hand. As you use this stuff, it'll make a lot more sense. But what we got to do is bake these maps. And normally what I do, if I was doing a full character, I would have a high-res version and a low-res version. This is my low-res version. My high-res version I would either use to bake maps off in another software to bring into this, or I would bring it into here to do this next step. But we're going to do like the old-fashioned, cheapy way of doing it. So, in texture set settings, this is basically all the settings for the object. We can change the visual size of what we're painting. Basically the texture size. So here we can move from going to really low resolution to really high resolution whenever we want. There's no problem with that, and we'll see that in a little bit as well. The channels that we're using, some stuff we don't have to worry about, and then these bake mesh maps. So I'm going to click this bake mesh maps here, and it brings into the baking. And I'm going to change some global settings, and I'm going to change some settings per object. So the common settings for everything is my output size. I'm going to be 8K. I want to be as nice as possible. Make sure that's the same for both of them, which it is. And then in its high poly parameters here, like I said, I've not got a high poly version to work off. So I'm just going to use low poly as high poly mesh. Again, this is a very old-fashioned way of doing stuff, which is all good. And then I'm going to turn off ID. If you come to this like bake map mesh map bakers, I'm going to turn off ID on both objects like that, because we don't need that. So what are these? These are all the different maps we're going to make, and they're going to be we're not really going to change any. We're not going to change any of the settings in this actually. Again, when we have different maps or when we're doing different things of making more complex stuff, we'll change some of the settings. But for now, we're going to keep it simple. Is there any information in the normal map? No. Is there any information in the world space map? No. ID map, there would be, but we're not using it. Ambient occlusion, there are things we can have fun with inside here. Curvature, we're not going to change anything inside here, but we could change. We would normally change generate from mesh or generate from normal map depending on what we're using, but we're just going to keep it as mesh. Position, all good, and thickness, all good. So, and you'll see these kind of appear as the maps are baking. I'll kind of point out which is which as they come up. Okay, so that's all I'm changing. All I'm changing in here is just my output size being at 8K, highest as possible and then just using my low poly as a high poly mesh. So boom. So we start doing the world space normal, which is the position of this object in the 3D space. And then we're going to do ambient occlusion. Yep. So you see the ambient occlusion. So we know what ambient occlusion is. It's contact shadows, proximity shadows. This is the curvature. It looks whack at first, but it comes in nice later on. That's position. This is all about its 2D vertical position. Thickness. The lighter it is, the thicker it is, the darker it is, the thinner it is. And you see that happen on the bag as well. So this is world space normal. So where is it in the 3D world? And then you get your ambient occlusion, which is looking really nice. You'll see the curvature look nicer on here once it's been done. Much nicer, but it's going to look really weird on this one at first. Sorry, I got a burp trapped. And then we got the basically its XY position, its vertical position, then its thickness, and then we're done. It's cool. So now we can click return to painting mode. Now you can see that there's a little bit of depth now on this object. It looks a little bit nicer, but also you can see the ambient occlusion has been baked onto this surface, which is mostly good. Sometimes it can be a bit bad, but it's fine for this one. Now we can actually have a look at those maps on their own. So if I press B for bake, I can actually cycle through. So this is the ID map. There's no ID map, so there's nothing there. This is the ambient occlusion map, so we can actually see how that ambient occlusion has taken. See if there's any issues. B again, this is the curvature, so you can see how that works. So curvature is like ambient occlusion, but where ambient occlusion is just two parameters. The flatter the surface, sorry, not the flatter surface, the more open to the light the surface, the lighter it is. But then when you get areas of corners, intersections, places where the light's not going to get to, it gets darker. Curvature works similar. The flatter the surface, the grayer it is. But the more the surface becomes convex, the brighter it gets, because that's an outward corner, or the more concave it gets, the darker it gets, because that's a concave corner. So you can see there that that little internal section there is darker because that's a concave, and then it's lighter here because that's a convex. This position, so you can see there that there is a gradient going through the world. This is basically an XY position in the world. This is thickness, so the thinner it is, the darker it is, the thicker it is. Sorry, thinner it is, the darker it is, the thicker it is, the lighter it is. But areas where it's got nothing on the opposite side will just be white. That's why this is like super white. And this is like a little bit grayer because this is an enclosed surface where this is literally just open. Height and yeah, we've not got anything there. And press M to get back to normal. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to go through the really fancy way of texturing and the really kind of it's just a lot to take in one video. So what I'm going to do is a really broad overview of my way of texturing and the way we're texturing in class. We will rarely, if ever, never use standard painting layers like this for painting directly onto the surface. If you want to do some hand painted stuff in your own time, go for it. You know, I've seen people, hand paint this kind of stuff all the time. But what I'm going to do is do a non-destructive way of working, which is I'm going to fill a layer with something. I'm going to make a bunch of fill layers, and then I'm going to use those fill layers and mask them off. Now the point why I'm doing that is because with fill layers, you can't. I'll show you. I'll paint a fill layer. So I've added the fill layer by clicking the little paint bucket icon here. If I try and paint on the surface, it says fill layers are non-paintable. But on the side here, we've got all the parameters for this object, for this layer. So we've got the base color. I can change the base color of it. I can change. Well, there's no height information there, so that's useless at the minute. The roughness, I can change the overall roughness. I can change the overall metallic. So I can make this like a really chromy kind of thing like that if I wanted to. This is leather though, so I'm actually going to turn off metallic because I don't need metallic on this. And because it's leather, it's kind of rough, so I'm going to bring that up to about, you know, halfway. Now you're going to see a lot of these parameters are black and white because it's positive, negative. Black being 0, 1 being positive 1, and it just means that when you're using white, you're adding something. When you're using black, you're taking something away. Cool. So this is my lowest level. I'm going to make this be a, you know, I'm going to eyeball in a kind of leathery material like that. Okay. Super nice. Now this is just my base layer, so I'm not actually going to do anything with this one. But what I am going to do is copy this. So I'm going to right click, copy layer, and I'm going to go to my bag, and I'm just going to paste that in. There you go. So if I know I'm going to be using the same thing over multiple layers, I can copy them over. It doesn't work though if you're using fancy stuff that we're going to do in a second. Okay. Awesome. So now I want to make some of these. I want to make some base stuff for these metallic sections here and here. So these like little clasps. So make sure I'm on my bodice. I'm going to make a new fill layer, and this is going to be metallic. So I'm going to keep that metallic channel, and it's going to be maybe a cobalty blue. So let me cobalty grey. So a bit like that. Roughness I'm going to bring down, but I'm going to bring my metallic not all the way up, but fairly high, like that. Okay, that's nice. So I'm going to call this one leather. Sorry, cold hands are making it hard to type. I'm going to call this metal. Just like in my in Photoshop, I can just double click on the word, on the layer name, and it changes it. I can change it. I think the cold is making me a bit weird. It's very cold in my flat at the minute. Now, obviously this new metallic layer is sitting on top of everything, because just like Photoshop, layers that are on top of each other will override the one below it. Now, just like in Photoshop, we do have layer blends. So on the right hand side of this layer, we do have, where it says norm, a layer blend. So you can go through and if you're familiar with how layers work and how the blends work, deal with them. For now, I'm going to leave it as normal because that's what we need. But obviously this metallic is on top of everything, which I don't want. I don't want that metallic overriding everything. You know, where's my leather? So what I'm going to do is add a mask to this. And this is where the fun really comes. So I'm going to click on this color channel. This is material channel or color channel in the layer. This is a channel. So I'm going to right click on that and I'm going to add a black mask. And you'll see to the right of it you get a new channel. This is your mask channel. So you got your color channel and you get your mask channel. But you can see everything's disappeared because I've added a black mask. Remember, black takes away. And to this black mask, I'm going to add a paint modifier, which allows me to actually paint and control that paint information on this mask. And you can tell I've added something because it's a bit orange underneath. Now, what I'm going to do is press 4, and that 4 turns on the polygon fill tool. And what I'm going to do is find either on the UV or on my actual physical model, I'm going to find those points that I want to be metallic and just paint them in with white or fill them in with white. So how this works is I've got triangle fill that will fill in triangles, obviously. There you go. Or polygon fill, which will fill in full polygons. This will fill in full solid bits of geometry. So if this was all one solid piece of geometry, it'd fill the whole thing in. But because this is broken up into individual chunks, I can just fill in those individual chunks. And the last one is UV chunk fill, which is what I'm going to use here, just to be safe, because this only fills in UV chunks. And how I've UV'd this is everything, all my little bits here, well, everything's one solid object. Nothing's been split up in any crazy way. So you can see I'm just clicking and filling them on. And you see how it fills them in. And that pulls back that metallic material. is really nice. So around the back. I did say that because of the way that this UV's been, the model's been set up, my symmetry is not going to work unless I change it a little bit. Because I'll show you again where the symmetry actually is. So if I come up to this sailboat here, symmetry, that's where my symmetry is, right across there. So that's obviously not right. That's not going to do me any good. I can change it by coming into here, and I can, where is the, show the manipulator at the bottom there. So I can actually click and drag that and try and get it in the middle there. But like I said, there's ways of inside Maya to get that set up. So I'm not too bothered about that. Okay, but you can see there I'll borrow those metallic sections back. Nice. But I'm thinking maybe my leather section is a little bit monochromatic. Maybe I want to add a couple of different other kind of colors in there. So I'm going to get my leather layer, and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to change this one to be maybe a bit redder, like that. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to right click, add a black mask. To that black mask, I'm going to add a paint layer. And then I'm going to decide where I'm going to fill. So do I want the breastplate and this? What about that? How does that look? Okay. What about if I do this bit here? Not angry with that bit. I think I quite liked that and that. And this at the back. Yeah, okay. Because maybe that's softer leather section. Softer leather there, and then harder leather around there. Okay. And I think I'm going to add one more. And this one's going to be a bit darker one here, so I'm going to just delete that. So I can actually duplicate with the mask applied to it, but that mask is obviously not going to be useful, so I'm just going to remove the mask for now. I'm going to make this like that. This is really robust leather, and this is going to be for the small little clasps. So black mask, add a bit up, and then I can just fill those in. And the great thing about this, and I'll show you in a second, is that you're never really stuck with what you choose here. Because I might just be adding in these to get an idea. Hold shift and right click, drag. You can rotate around the light, which is useful. There we go. Have I got everything? Yep, because I think I was doing geometry fill. There we go. Look at that. Oh, okay, you can change your mind, because the great thing about this is I've not actually dedicated any time. I'm not painted anything. I'm using these fill layers. So what I could do is come and change this fill layer to be a bright orange if I wanted to. Which I think I'm not too angry about that either. This is the great thing about this way of working, is this color here is never going to change. Or is this will never get a effect. It's only the mask that's got all the dedicated information on there. And even then, not really. So I can make adjustments, Or if I wanted to, I could just completely get rid of it, It's up to me how I do this kind of stuff. There we go. Now I can quickly jump onto the bag and do something similar. So I quite like that cobalt metal I've got on there. So I'm going to copy that. Copy layer, go to my bag, paste that layer in. Clear that mask. So right click on the mask. Clear mask. I don't need to remove it. I just need to clear it because I need to add the... Because what happens is I've cleared the mask. When I copy pasted the mask in, It's still got all the position information from the last thing I used the mask on. So none of my masks are going to be in the right position. But now I can go through and just add it on the bits that I want. Oops. Now if I wanted to, I can, I believe, get rid of these by going to Windows, Views, Shader Settings, no, Display Settings, there we go. Got that one, Display Settings. I believe I can get rid, or at least turn down the opacity. Yeah, if that wireframe's getting in your way a bit too much. There we go. Okay. So you see, you can have quite a lot of fun there, and that's one of the really nice reasons why I love using this kind of way of working. I can be even more anal and organized about it, where I'm actually setting up groups and subgroups for all this kind of stuff. But I'm going to keep it really simple at first. I'm going to show you how you can do some really fun stuff. Now it's time to add a little bit of weather and tear and fun to this body. So like there, I just made that. I've not got rid of my 2D view. I've literally just grabbed a little bar in the middle, moved it to the right, so I'm more looking at this. Okay, so between, okay, so that one and that one, okay, and that one. So what I'm going to do is start to this area here. I'll do it over all the leather section there. So I'm going to make sure it's underneath this metal. So on all this leather section here, I'm going to add some information. I'm going to add some information. So first of all, I'm going to add some shadow. I say shadow, it's more like build up. I don't actually want to make shadow, because that's what my color looks like at the minute. But I don't actually want to have shadow, because that's an old-fashioned way of texturing. So I'm going to add a new layer, new fill layer. I'm going to turn off my metallic, because I don't need any metallic. I don't need any height information. But I want roughness and I want color. So my color, I'm at first just going to make it something dark like that, because I'm going to use some of those layer blends on this. And my roughness, I'm going to turn it right up. At first, because I think I know what I'm doing. And then again, I'm going to hold... I'm going to right click, add a fill layer to that. Now in this case, to this mask, I'm not going to add a fill, or a paint, sorry, not a fill. I'm going to add a generator, and we made all those maps, we baked all those maps for this exact reason. I'm going to add a generator to that mask, and these generators are full of all these cool things we can do, but they all need those bakes we did before to make happen. So I'm going to go into this generator here. I'm going to add an ambient occlusion, so you can explore all these and see kind of what they kind of give you previews of what they do. Some of them are fairly self-explanatory, some of them aren't. So ambient occlusion is ambient occlusion. So I'm going to click this. Now this one's funny because it comes in the wrong way round. So because of how ambient occlusion works and how masks work, an ambient occlusion is white, predominantly white with black. Now I want to have the white in all the dark areas. So if you think about, I want the negative of that. I want the negative of my ambient occlusion. If I just click global invert, there we go. So it puts all that information now in those areas. So boom, like that. So that's what the ambient occlusion is doing. But like I said, I don't want to add like shadow or anything like that. I just want to add a bit of build up, I guess you'd call it. Break up the... So I'm pressing C there as well to go to my color channel. So color, height, roughness, metallic, normal, mask. And then M to go back to normal, so C. And the great thing about this as well is I've added that generator there. So let's make this really nice and big. Nice and soft. Okay, ambient occlusion right there. Let's add another one. Let's add another generator. Add another ambient occlusion generator. Invert that. But this is where again new people will this will trip you up a little bit. Even on these modifiers, we've still got layer blends. So you see norm and norm. So the bottom one should always be normal because it's nothing's underneath it. But this one on top is overriding that one, as you can see, because it's set to normal. So what I'm going to do is set to multiple. Okay, see what that does. Not quite. What about... So what I'm going to do is basically go through the different layer blends to find the one that's working for me. So... Okay. So we're starting to add a little bit of information. Again, I'm not treating this as like shadow build, like painting shadow. I might want to trade this as a... So I'm going to up my roughness. So I'm actually creating a bit of roughness in there. Is the color right? Do I need to change the color? Because I just use that color to futz with. Or I could change the entire layer. So this layer here, I could change the entire layer to be a multiply. There you go. And then, like, so another things we can experiment with is to this I'm going to add noise essentially, because maybe this is looking a little bit too neat. Maybe I want to break it up with a bit of noise. How I do that? It's very, very simple. Right click. I'm going to add a fill, because a fill is basically it's a fill within a fill. I just want to fill this with a lot of noise, so I'm going to add fill. It's just going to come in as grey because it comes in as that color. This is where we can use that assets window here. There we go. So bring the assets in. I hate how it wants a dock on everything. There we go. And I'm just going to click through this until I find something that looks like this, noise. Or I could type in noise up here. I can search for noise. But what I'm going to do is just look for something that looks right. I'm going to have a nice large thing, and I just want noise. We can experiment. So for instance, I'm going to drag this BMW spots white into this. So I want to add it into this grayscale section, this grayscale uniform color section here. Okay, so you see how it's applying over everything? That's because that's still set to normal. But again, if we go through the layer blends, okay, that's great. You can see there, it's looking, multiple's looking okay. Okay, so that's what that subtract looks quite nice. No, ooh, that looks okay. I think multiple or subtract. Looks okay. And that's what I wanted right there. So now you can kind of see there's got a bit of build up. That's just that layer there. So I'm going to do something similar. So I'm going to add a new... I don't want any metallic. Don't want any height, maybe. I'll turn off height for now. I'm going to make it white at first as well. So I'm going to add a new, again, black mask. You can kind of see I use black mask for everything. To that I'm going to add a generator, but for this generator I'm going to add, we've got fiberglass, we've got dirt, we've got light, we've got metal edgeware curvature. In fact, there is a metal edgeware. There it is. So we've got curvature, or we've got dirt. Let's see what dirt does. No, it's not doing what I want it to do. Metal edgeware. That's a bit better. That's kind of what I want. Because what I want to do is it's almost like the leather's been banged around a little bit. So metal edgeware. Just because it says metal edgeware doesn't mean it just has to be metal. So I'm going to play with some of these parameters. Oh, it's thinking. Oh, it's saving. So it'll save every now and then. If you see on here, this little dial might start to... not dial. This little icon might turn green and then start to almost like get smaller. It's because it's about to save. Not really doing anything. Oh, so I'm not really going to do anything with this. Yeah, it's not really going to do anything with this because it's not going to with the proper information. Okay, so what I'm doing here is more about looking. I'm using the white because it's very obvious, but what I'm doing is trying to find like rougher areas. So it's going to be a bit rougher. Okay, so with that, I can now. Do I try and find the right color here, or do I use a layer blend over here? You know. Okay, that's quite nice. So that's using, what's that, divide. That's that, you see what I mean? So that's to add a little bit of something in there. We're also using that roughness, which is already on there. Now what I don't like is, it's on here. I don't really want it to be on there. So I will need to, I kind of want it only to be on this kind of brown section. This doesn't feel right to me. So what I can do is add a paint modifier to this. And then basically paint out where I don't want it to be. So there you go. I've taken it away from that plate. I've taken it away from that plate. I don't like how that lighter value is interacting with this. So that looks a little bit. But yeah, that makes sense as well because after that softer leather, it's not going to. And this is far more kind of like rougher leather. It's not going to look the same, is it? It's not going to be acting the same. Now what's really, really cool about this whole software is that we baked everything before at 8K, and that's purely for those maps right here. But we've been texturing so far only at 1K. But what I can do is actively switch in between these different resolutions whenever I want. So I can go all the way down to not even 1K, like 128, 128 pixels by 128, tiny, tiny, tiny. Or I can go all the way up to 4K and get really, really nice results here. You know, boom. Now I can't go any higher. I can't go to 8K yet. I'm sure that'll be in newer updates. But when we save out the textures, we can save it out as 8K. But 4K is the only one we can work at. If you set it as 4K, it will impact the performance though. So I like doing this for doing fine detail stuff or checking stuff. But if I'm doing if I'm applying a lot of stuff over a large area, I'm only going to do it in one area. I'm only going to do it at a lower resolution. What's really cool as well is I've just done that. You can see it's chugging a little bit. Maybe I do want to have some height information. So I've turned that height information off, but maybe if I turn it back on. What if I start to adjust it? Ooh, that's looking a bit naff. So it's looking very, very naff. Although with the height information, you have to be very, very subtle with it to make it work. It can be a little bit. It's very, very subtle. And then sometimes you do all that information, you do all that work to make it look okay, and it doesn't actually come out in the end. Now what's cool as well, we did add that paint layer, that paint modifier there. I can also, within that one paint modifier, or make a new paint modifier, come in and start to paint stuff in or out. See what I mean? So I've got that paint modifier there, which is controlling. I use that as a fill layer for the darker, for these areas, and this area back here. So remember, holding shift, right click, I can move my light around. But what if I want to actually paint stuff out? I can do it on a different paint layer. Boom. And now I can use a different brush because this is a standard. This is like a soft brush. I don't like it. So what I can do is get a different brush. Now we've got Photoshop brushes inside here. A lot of Kylo brushes. You can bring in your own brushes and stuff. This is Photoshop. I'm going to get one of my favorite brushes, the cement brush, right there. The cement brushes are my favorite. Just because it says cement doesn't mean it only works for cement. So with that selected, now I'm going to start to gradually take that back. Carefully. It's still got all the settings for when I last used it as well, so it's very, very subtle. So you can see I've actually painted some of that information out. And what say I don't come in here and add one to there, do the same thing, paint out some of that information. Maybe we could paint it in, you know. Maybe around here, you know, Sasha lives on the street, so maybe this is a little bit grimy around other areas. Here, what's to say that we're not adding in some like around the arms, because it's around under her arms there. What about if we add something that's going to give it a little bit of kind of directionality? I mean, like adding a bit of, you know, if she's rubbing up against that all the time, just stripping it back. Cool, you know what I mean? Some fun stuff. I mean, you can really do anything you want with this whole process. So, what's some other fun stuff we could do? We could add some stitching. So if I need to paint along. Now this is something I've not used that often because it's still fairly new to me anyway. Is you can paint along a wire like this. So just like in using paths inside Photoshop or Illustrator. He says, now I've used this before, but just not for a while. And I think I only used it as like a bit of I was having fun with it essentially. So that's something like that. And I believe oh, there it is. All right. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. Now we do have a stitch. There it is. That's road. Oh, that's not going to work. There we go. So this is a fairly new thing inside Painter, which I think is really neat. It's really fun. So basically what we're doing is setting up like a vertex path. Not a vertex, sorry. A vector path, that's the one. And then we're drawing a stroke across it. Now this is, even though I'm on a standard layer here, which normally we can't adjust anything, we can't change anything, we can still adjust stuff inside here because we're not committing to it just yet. Because what I'm doing is setting up the stroke. Because I can still change parameters. So let's make this like a sickly yellowy. Oh, I love it. Very cool. And that's always going to be there, I believe. Yeah, it's always going to be there, so I can come in there and adjust it. You can commit to it so that it's actually on the mesh, but it's very cool. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Pardon me. I think now we're just kind of like futzing around with stuff. But this kind of stuff is really, really fun to do. And yeah, I'm adding like a bit of stitching onto something there. But what's to say you can't do like that looks really good actually. What's to say you can't do that on some sort of floral rococo style patterning on the edge of something, Yeah, it looks really good. I should really pick up this project again. I'm actually looking at it going, I should actually finish this project off. But those are some stuff we can do inside Painter, and as you can see, it's very much like Photoshop. There is a little bit more complexity to it, because obviously you're dealing in 3 dimensions. The way we deal with our layers is a little bit different, but a lot of the base core understanding is still the same. We've still got layer blends. Our masks are incredible. Well, I find masks incredibly important. I find them so important. And just knowing that with that layer, that first initial color layer, using that black mask on top of it, you can change whatever you want. I could change this to be a lime green if I wanted to. And you see the results already on the mesh. That actually doesn't look too bad. That looks like, that looks mossy. That looks cool. You see the results on the mesh straight away. And it's non-destructive, because then I could literally just go back to how it was before. I go to another color, all non-destructive. And even with in that little brush here, I'm still not really dedicating myself. I'm not. I'm still not finished messing around by the looks of things. What am I still not, Dave? I'm still not like, what am I trying to say? It's still modifiable. The only layer that you can't go back and change later on is a straight up paint layer. Everything else is pretty modifiable. You can still mess with stuff. You can still have fun with stuff. It's still non-destructive. Yeah. So I can feel myself going deeper into the rabbit hole here. So yeah, this whole, it can be intimidating at first. I completely understand that when you first get into this texture, and I'm making it look easy, and I'm having fun with doing this, and I have been doing this a long time. I can completely understand that sometimes it does like come across as like, oh, it's really complex and stuff. It's really not. The big thing with this, though, is just about having fun with it, understanding that it is gonna be a little bit tricky, and you're not gonna pick it up straight away. But it's that practice side of things, and it's just knowing that you're gonna suck for a little bit. Have fun, ask questions, because all I'm doing now is just having fun. Yeah. So that's a brief introduction of Painter. What are we at now? Just under an hour. That's a brief introduction of Painter. When we come to actually do our proper projects, we're going to be looking back at the beginning. We're actually going to go through step by step by step. But as a thing, Painter is just Photoshop. It takes a little bit of getting used to, especially when you got these different things. But really, it's really, really good. You'll find that you'll love it straight away. But we're going to be starting off really simple. We're going to be making floors and walls. We're going to be learning how to do all that kind of stuff first of all, and then we're going to be going on to the more complex stuff. So don't worry about anything. It's going to be good. See you in the next one.